who are working very hard to discredit him. From TV infomercials selling 2 anti-Clinton videotapes to countless newsletters, all of the charges against Mr. Clinton are hyped and sent around the country. In a magazine interview, Mrs. Clinton argues that this is all for commercial and political gain, with no basis for the stories. She said, quote, "I think it is regrettable that there seem to be both commercial reasons and political reasons why people want to undermine the president and the people associated with him, basically making up stories or spreading rumors and innuendo for which there is no basis," end of quote. But from Whitewater to Jennifer Flowers to Paula Jones, the right has found the ammunition to try to undermine the president's ability to push through his clearly not so conservative agenda. Is this just what presidents have to expect in the post-Watergate world, or just part of the new standard the Clintons feel they're being asked to meet? Mike?
Jerry Falwell, you're peddling a videotape that essentially accuses President Clinton of murder in Arkansas. Let's listen to a bit of it.
People are dead in Arkansas. There are people that are dead. Yeah. When I started this, I knew that I might be one of the unsolved mysteries in Arkansas. There were boys on a railroad track. There were countless and countless people that mysteriously died that, as it turned out, had some connection to Bill Clinton. I believe this is going on today.
Jerry Falwell, where is your evidence? Who has died by opposing President Clinton, Bill Clinton, in Arkansas?
Well, first of all, Michael, you have bad eyes and ears. That wasn't Jerry Falwell you just saw there. That was Larry Nichols.
Oh, come on. You're peddling,
you just
you're
listen,
peddling
he was
this
working for Mr. Clinton when Mr. Clinton was governor there. And everybody on the tape that we are shipping out, which the national media should have been doing and has been hypocritically quiet on, we would not have to do. It appears that now that thousands of people are getting the facts, and we're not making any charges. We're not saying Paula Jones is correct. We're not saying any of these things are true.
You accuse President Clinton of killing people.
No, we are not. We're saying no, we're repeating the evidence that is being put forth by others.
What evidence? There's no evidence.
We'll
you
find out. There is a
Nichols.
lawsuit charge filed right now. And the courts, if they're allowed to hear it, will make the determination. By the way,
there's no
Paula
lawsuit
Jones and
there's no lawsuit accusing President Clinton of murder. What the heck are you talking about?
Nobody's even said that. You have
Jerry
bad ears
Falwell,
again. Michael, you just have a problem.
Is that not
if these charges have been brought against Bob Dole or Jesse Helms or Jack Kemp or years ago against Ronald Reagan or George Bush, you would have been doing backflips and the Washington Post with you and the New York Times. You'd be in hysteria because it's against a liberal and a darling president that you adore. It gets you all upset. The fact is that the national media, if these charges had been made against someone conservative, would be doing all this themselves. We're simply saying these charges are being made.
Jerry
look
Falwell,
at them and determine are they true.
You're making the charges. I
am making no charges whatsoever.
You don't have an infomercial that is selling this videotape we just saw. That isn't your product being sold there on television?
We absolutely are offering that and other videos. We have done now, we actually have 12 women who are making similar charges as Paula Jones and Jennifer Flowers.
For a second.
Why has this never happened to Al Gore? Why has this never happened to Sam Nunn? Why has this never happened to Bob Dole and to other persons, public servants? So the reason is because they're not guilty of that kind of thing.
We'll get to the sex thing. Let's stick to the murder thing briefly. You are selling, as you now concede, a tape of which we just saw a bit, in which a man accuses President Clinton of murdering his political opponents in Arkansas. I'm asking you, shouldn't someone, before they sell a videotape like that, have some evidence to support it? Where is your evidence? Who are these people who are allegedly getting murdered?
We are making it very clear that we're simply giving hours and hours of testimony from individuals in Arkansas who are saying these things. And these persons, if they're not telling the truth, why doesn't somebody sue them? Why doesn't somebody bring libel or slander charges?
You know the President of the United States can't bring libel charges against anybody. He's liable.
Well, you could, Michael. You seem to be most upset about it.
I can't sue him. He hasn't said anything about me. If he did, if he said that about you, and if he said that about you, you'd sue him for libel in 2 seconds.
Because I'm not guilty.
Are you saying President Clinton is guilty of murder?
No, I'm saying that if the president is not guilty of these things that are on the tapes and these dozen or more women who are saying he has misconducted himself with them, then he should say so, or someone should say so.
Don't you think Bill Clinton is justified in saying that his enemies will stop at nothing to get him when Jerry Falwell is peddling a tape that accuses him of murder. And then I asked Jerry Falwell, where's the evidence? And Jerry Falwell blathers on and basically admits you have no evidence at all to support these charges.
Michael, I know you're having a hernia right now about this whole thing because your darling is being affected. But the reality is the liberal, most radical left-wing president this country has ever had is sitting in office, and you people in the national media are cowards, you're hypocrites. It took the Washington Post 80 days to comment on the Paula Jones affair.
The answer to that is yes. Go ahead, John.
Mark Green, there's a lot of national press that are also jumping on this anti-Clinton bandwagon, and some of them are doing it in amazing, subtle ways. The New York Times today, I couldn't believe it, had a front-page story on the lobbying activities of Betsy Wright, whose responsibility was covering the president against bimbo eruptions, her own words, during the campaign. Is the New York Times part of this conservative conspiracy?
No, of course not. They're a publication investigating the president. In other words, the premise of your question impeaches Reverend Falwell's hysteria. He's saying the media are ignoring this, but here's the New York Times.
No, wrong verb, ignored. He said ignored.
It was the New York Times front page, which first broke in a Jeff Gerth article, the Whitewater story. Now they're writing about lobbyists. So the liberal press is investigating this president, frankly, as much or more than recent presidents, and heralding these charges against him. So it may not be enough red meat to a Jerry Falwell and a Floyd Brown, but it's plenty, and it's scrutinizing, and it's objective.
Well, what he was saying is that they ignored in the past. They are now coming around because of some of the publicity that the kinds of things he's done has generated.
Well, one second.
For example, I do agree with you that some of the liberals are jumping on this bandwagon. Even today, my colleague Mike Kinsley wrote an article, and his last sentence was, quote, but if he, and he's referring to President Clinton, but if he would step forward and tell the true story, I'd feel a lot better. So it's not just conservatives that are wondering whether the president is telling the truth. And I'm not saying Michael's accusing him of anything specifically, but there is doubt even in liberal circles as to whether or not the president is being straightforward in responding to these charges.
Well, first, John, there's doubt in conservative circles whether or not the press has gone too rabid and too far. Eric Brindell, the editorial page editor of the New York Post, thinks the press has gone way too far in scrutinizing this president, because there will be again, as you hope, a Republican president.
Mark,
and if he or she is held up to the kind of private sins, allegedly, 12 or 20 years ago, what man or woman will run? And secondly, when you ask why did it take so long, until and when Paula Jones filed a civil lawsuit publicly, do you want any woman who comes forward and charges something? Some women may be right, and some may be frivolous, and a setup to be covered by the national media. You have to have some standards, or else all the media will turn into a private sex squad, a police squad, deterring people from ever running or serving.
Let me ask Jerry Falwell.
Mark, I'll accept the construct of the concern that we ought to have that the presidency as a broad institution is being undermined by this process, and I do have some concerns about it. But I am more concerned about what I think was partisan abuse of power by 26 investigations of President Reagan and President Bush, chaired by Democratic chairmen in Congress, and now a democratically controlled Congress refusing to have a single hearing on any of the serious charges that are presented.
What are you talking about?
Isn't that inconsistent?
Absolutely not. There are going to be hearings on Whitewater, and there were people in the Nixon and Bush administrations who were investigated, indicted, and convicted of crimes. The issue isn't how many investigations. The issue is there plausible evidence? Might a crime have been committed? We are here talking about a failed land deal and sexual slanders. It is totally different than the premise of your question, which is, in the post-Watergate era, should presidents get accustomed to this? In Watergate, 29 of the president's aides were convicted of crimes, John. Don't facilely compare that
relate this to
Jerry
Watergate.
Falwell's
I talked about
tape.
a post-Watergate era. And you are just trying to hide behind the fact that you have a democratically controlled Congress that is playing a game with a calendar on hearings.
John, there's a difference between crimes and slanders.
Jerry, we ask the questions around here, Jerry. Let me ask you, your videotape also says that Hillary Clinton is guilty of adultery. Now, where's your evidence for that?
I didn't hear what you said, Michael.
I'll say it again. Your videotape that you are selling has Larry Nichols, this guy from Arkansas, saying that Hillary Clinton has committed adultery. I'm asking you, what business is that of the American people? A, and B, what is your evidence for it? Take B.
What business is it of the American people? So that's the strident, arrogant, position that you and Bill and Hillary Clinton take, that it's none of the American people's business what they do or how they do it.
I didn't say the president. This is not the president.
Of the American people, 78% of the American people in a U.S. News and World Report poll of April 4 edition said they want their president to be a moral and spiritual leader.
Jerry, where's your evidence?
I am not producing. I'm producing it on the tape. I am giving what you and the media should be doing. Now, the courts are there, and the Congress, with 26 hearings against Mr. Clinton, Mr. Reagan, and Mr. Bush, and not one against Bill Clinton. That's pretty hypocritical. And something else that Mark Green said, Michael. Mark Green said that unless all of this stops, there'll be no good candidates to run because of the outrageous assaults and so on. There have been no bimbo eruptions against Al Gore or Sam Nunn, or I could name probably 95% of most of the Congress. The fact is, well, he's vice president, and we think he's a good man. Sam Nunn is a great man. He's a Democrat. He is in Georgia. Those things happen only when there's a whole lot of smoke. There's usually a little bit of fire, we say down here in Virginia, and you guys don't want to admit that.
I'm going to give you one more chance.
You're hypocrites all the way, and you know it, and I know it, and the American people know it.
You have made an accusation publicly against the First Lady, and I'm asking you if you have any evidence again about it, and you have essentially said no. I'm going to give you a chance to think if you got any.
I have not essentially said no whatsoever.
Well, where's your evidence?
I have on hours of videotapes produced the comments, the testimonies, the views of the Arkansas people who are saying these things.
You got some jerk in Arkansas. And he doesn't have any evidence either.
Well, there's free speech in this society, Michael.
You have the right to do it.
You think it's only for liberals. I think it's for everybody.
You have absolute right to put out this garbage if you want, but you also ought to have some evidence.
You don't have to listen to it. You didn't pay for it anyway. If you'd buy one, I'd let you great. But we have sent them out to thousands of people, and so far the overwhelming response is, why have the Michael Kinsleys and the Washington Post been so silent for so long? In spite of what Mark Green just said, the press did not speak up until we embarrassed them out of their holes.
We'll take a break, and we'll see who's really embarrassed in just a moment.
To give my home a nice atmosphere, I've tried French Provincial, Danish Modern, English Country, and Spanish Colonial. Little did I know that for nice atmosphere, all I really needed was American Standard, a reliable American Standard air conditioning system. It's one design that will last. I wish I'd known that back during my Spanish Colonial period.
American Standard air conditioning, built to a higher standard.
Michael Crawford brings you the power and passion of Andrew Lloyd Webber.
To glance behind the phantom of the opera is there inside your mind.
Set your spirits soaring with one of the greatest voices of our time.
The dawn was breaking.
13 of Andrew Lloyd Webber's most memorable songs.
It's so easy to leave me and say you'll share with me one love, one lifetime, wishing you were somehow here again. The power of the music of the night.
Michael Crawford and the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. Feel the power.
Call 1-800-257-1257 or send a check or money order for $16.95 for CDs or $10.95 for cassettes, plus $2.95 shipping and handling to Michael Crawford, P.O. Box 2919, Atlanta, Georgia.
Welcome back to Crossfire. Is the Paula Jones lawsuit part of a right-wing conspiracy to bring down the Clinton presidency? That's what many Clinton supporters say, and that's what we're debating. Our guests, the Reverend Jerry Falwell, founder long ago of the now defunct Moral Majority, who joins us from his Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. Mr. Falwell is marketing some controversial anti-Clinton videotapes, which we've been discussing. And joining us from New York is an old Crossfire friend, Mark Green, who used to sit in this very seat regularly. He's now much too important for that sort of thing as New York City's public advocate, the #2 job in the Big Apple. John?
Mark, let's talk about some of the politics associated with this. Whether it turns out to be a dozen or half a dozen, there are some more women who probably will be filing charges of this nature just from the stories that people hear in the background. How can the president handle the whole sequence of this continuation of things like the Paula Jones thing and deal with the responsibilities of the presidency?
Well, it's a problem. The thesis of this network of wackos held together by the glue of hatred and money and ideology is that mud sticks. And if enough people come forward and file charges, however frivolous, it costs the president money personally, and of course it distracts him. But what they better watch out for is the backlash of a fair-minded public. I'm almost tempted to turn over all the remaining time I might have had in this program and just let Jerry Falwell continue his hysteria. 1 second, excuse me, sir, just 1 second. Because when he says, well, we imply the president's guilty of murder, let him deny it. Well, Jerry, what if I accuse you of child abuse and let you deny it? It is so incredibly reckless that Joe McCarthy, when he made a false charge against the Boston lawyer, was exposed on national television, was censured by the Senate. You're lucky you're not a senator. You are so reckless and irresponsible. If you want to spew your hatred, go ahead, because you are the case of why Bill Clinton is having this difficulty. You're the reason the public overwhelmingly thinks these charges are either untrue or irrelevant to the health care, crime, welfare needs, and training of worker needs that this country really faces. So go ahead, a little more hatred if you can.
Jerry?
Well, first of all, Mark and Michael, I am not for a moment saying that what Paula Jones is saying is true, or that what a number of people are saying in Little Rock is true. I'm saying that they're worthy of investigation, and the national media, if it does not investigate these valid charges, at least on surface, then they owe an apology.
They owe an apology. I'm speaking now. You haven't offered a drop of evidence.
Michael,
you accuse the guy of murder, and then you say they're valid charges.
And I'm saying that if you don't, Michael, you and the other hypocrites of the national media, if you do not cover this and investigate this and determine if these charges are true, then you owe an apology to the John Tower family, to the Clarence Thomas, to Chuck Robb, to Gary Hart, and a long, long list of others. You know very well that 26 congressional hearings against Mr. Reagan and Mr. Bush, and not one against this president, against whom the so-called bimbo eruptions are endless.
Jerry, you're repeating yourself. Jerry, you're repeating yourself.
Simply because you're not listening, Mark, and simply because you're not listening, Michael, the American people are listening, and I can tell you that the American people, 78% of them want their leader, their president, to be a moral and spiritual leader, and I don't think that he is.
I think 100% of Americans want their president to be a moral leader. I don't know about a spiritual leader.
They didn't say that.
Let me ask you about that, about the Clarence Thomas case. When Anita Hill accused Clarence Thomas of sexual harassment, all you people immediately denounced her as a liar, as a hussy, couldn't wait to denounce her. Now along comes Paula Jones and makes the same similar accusation against the president, a president you don't care for, and all of a sudden you guys are out there raising money for her so-called defense fund, although she's the one who's suing. She doesn't need a defense fund.
I'm not raising any money for anybody's defense fund, and I did never attack Anita Hill. I watched as the Senate did. I looked as Mr. Kennedy leaned over the podium and charged her with moral inturpitude and so forth. I listened carefully. When I heard all the evidence, I became convinced, as did the Senate and the American people, that Clarence Thomas deserved to be a U.S. Supreme Court justice.
You don't think there's a certain hypocrisy
Anita Hill
did
not have one corroborating witness to support her. Paula Jones has 6 corroborating witnesses, and I'm simply saying, Michael, pull the veil down, be honest, be fair, stop playing the hypocrite, and at least examine what she and a lot of others are saying. If the charges are not true, then go on back to your liberal hogwash.
The press is examining them, and I've examined them, and I'm saying to you, isn't there I will concede to you there's been a certain amount of hypocrisy on the liberal side about this. I'm asking you to concede there's a certain amount of hypocrisy on the right-wing side in your treatment of Anita Hill and your treatment of Paula Jones. And isn't the key difference, there are some differences, some similarities. The key difference is this woman has accused someone you don't like, and that woman accused someone you do like.
The difference is that Anita Hill followed her accuser, from the person she was accusing, from job to job to job. This lady ran out of the room right away, outraged.
And she greeted him with a big smile, according to several witnesses, and when they ran into each other later.
So, John, you believe what she says on face value? Is that right?
No, not necessarily the whole story, Mark, but I do believe there's a lot there.
Jerry Falwell, if some woman came along out of the blue and accused you of dropping your pants in a hotel room when there was no one else around, should the press publish those charges on the front pages? Many people find it very interesting. Or should they wait to find out if they're true, wait till she files them before they put them on the front page?
I'm glad you asked that, Michael, because I have never been in a hotel room with a woman not my wife. I have never had a woman in my automobile riding with me who is not my wife, or unless other persons were there.
Don't you understand? It's possible for a woman to lie about this. That's the point.
And, well, when one of Mr. Clinton's state troopers, at his request, brought her to the room and has sworn in an affidavit he did do that, there's reason to at least to examine whether or not it in fact
We've been examining it. Anyway, we're out of time. Thanks a lot, Jerry Falwell, Mark Green. John, I'll be back with a little bit more sleaze in just a moment.